So I want to welcome everybody to the Economic Injury Disaster Loans for COVID-19 Reconsideration Guidance. I'm Mayor Jason Cilento from the Borough of Dunellen, New Jersey. I want to welcome the co-hosts to this webinar. That's Mayor Robert Fazen of Brook Borough, Mayor Patrick Giblin of Cranford Township, Mayor John Madden of Middlesex Borough, Mayor Colleen Mahr of Fanwood Borough, Mayor Matthew Moench of Bridgewater Township, Mayor Joseph Signorello III of Roselle Park Borough. Representing Mayor Al Smith of Scotch Plains Township is Con Zoganis, member of the Scotch Plains Business Resource Group, and Mayor Sarah Todisco of Garwood Borough. I want to thank the mayors for co-hosting this webinar today. We all share the same common goals during this pandemic, which are to protect the public welfare and safety of all of our constituents, and to help our municipalities' business community survive the economic impact of COVID-19. I want to extend a shout out to Ronnie Haynes, who is Dunellen Borough School District's IT, as well as the Dunellen Borough Municipality. Finally, I want to give a thanks to the U.S. Small Business Administration for sponsoring this free webinar. Our webinar will be hosted by Kathy Cook. This webinar will be recorded, and you will have an opportunity for question and answers after the presentation. So without further ado, welcome Kathy Cook.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you all the mayors and mayorettes, I guess I would say. What a wonderful opportunity to speak to a bunch of champions. Constituents I know have given you a lot of and inquiries and desire to learn more about the economic injury disaster loans for the COVID-19. And we're now at the point where it's about 4 months in, and a lot of people are getting notices and they just don't understand what's going on with their application. So as we talk about these things, I'm going to kind of back up a little bit and tell you how things move through the process. But I think it's incumbent upon all of us to help the applicant understand things. I am one of those people that don't like to read the instructions. I will put together the IKEA furniture the best way I can, with putting and unfolding all those things and laying the nuts and bolts. But I think in this instance, I'm going to just verbally discuss all of the different issues that are surrounding why somebody would not have gotten approved the first time. And that's not to mean that this loan program is approved for everyone. It is taxpayer dollars, and we have to be responsible and do our fiduciary duty. However, we are also applicants' advocates, and we want to approve as many loans as possible. So probably the most common reason somebody would get declined for any type of loan is unsatisfactory credit. For the economic injury disaster loans for the COVID-19, we asked the applicant a bunch of questions in the streamlined application. And one of the questions is, who is the primary contact for the business? This person's credit is the one that's going to be pulled. If it is a nonprofit, it's going to be that person. If it is a for-profit, it's going to be that person. If it is sole proprietor, it's going to be that person. We currently use a FICO score, and if the applicant score is below that figure, then the loan would be declined. It would be declined in writing, and we would say, unfortunately, we are unable to approve your application for the economic injury disaster loan for COVID-19 due to unsatisfactory credit. You have within 6 months from the date of this letter to disagree with our decision and provide whatever information you have to help us overcome the reason for the decline. It provides an email box. It provides our toll-free customer service line, our customer service email box as well. And so it gives them guidance. What we don't do and what we can't do is tell in each situation what exactly exactly to provide because there's endless numbers of situations. So let's take a unsatisfactory credit due to federal income taxes that are delinquent, and that showed up on the credit bureau. One way that the applicant can turn that around is perhaps that is an old posting on the credit, and the applicant can provide information from the IRS or a satisfaction of a judgment from the court saying that they have paid off that lien. They write a letter asking for reconsideration, provide the documentation that would help us come up with another decision. And then we also would like to see their latest tax returns and have them submit an IRS Form 4506T. That allows us to verify their tax filing. Okay, so let's take a situation such as with my brother and my father. It's a junior-senior situation, not the dance, just the people, junior and senior. So my brother bought a car and my father wasn't told about it. But then my father pulled his credit report and saw the loan for the car was on his credit report. And so there's all kinds of mix-ups. There's people that are using other people's social security numbers. There's all kinds of situations. So whatever documentation that applicant can provide to help us come up with a different conclusion, then that's what they should provide. They cannot just call up and say, I want reconsideration. I want you to look at this again. My credit score is higher than what it was when you pulled it. No, we need evidence of that. Right? Again, so no doesn't necessarily mean no. It means based on the information that we have at the time, we're not able to approve the loan. And then you have up to 6 months, as stated in our decline letter, to ask for reconsideration. It must be in writing, must contain information to help us reach another conclusion. And then we also want the latest tax returns and the IRS Form 4506T. Economic injury not substantiated. I don't know if you've had a chance to yourself apply for an economic injury disaster loan or look at the streamlined application process, but it's very, very easy. You've got the name of the business, the legal name of the business, the doing business as, address, social security number, EIN, what type of business it is, what type of industry it's in, and then they come to a section where there's questions regarding the gross sales for the 12 months preceding the disaster. That's gross sales 12 months preceding January 31st, 2020. Most people are not going to dig for 1 month of sales. They're going to use whatever their annual gross sales were for 2019. Then if they are a manufacturing business or a sales business, we ask for the cost of goods sold for the same period of time, 12 months prior to the date of the disaster. If they are a nonprofit, we ask for their 12 months of operating expenses, the same for agriculture. Let's say it's a landlord. We ask for the figure of lost rents. When we had churches, we've asked for the amount of income from secular activities. That would be if you had a church and the church had a daycare where they charged for daycare services, or they had a thrift store, or they had a bakery. Something not, it's run by the church, but it is not church related as far as services. All right, so here's this person and they go in and they come to the gross sales for the 12 months previous to the disaster and they put 0. And then they look at the gross sales, the cost of goods sold for the same period and they put 0. Well, if you had no sales the year before COVID happened and you had no cost of goods sold, then that means your business was not doing very well before COVID. And we would decline them because whatever injury they had no money, whatever their sales situation is, it wasn't attributed to the COVID. It's something that happened before. And you're like, well, that's just crazy. Well, yes, it is. What's happened is people have expected that the question would read, what are your sales now that COVID has happened? And they put 0 or they put very low figures. Some cases, they shouldn't have a cost of goods sold. If you are not reselling something, if you are, for instance, a limousine or taxi driver, you don't have any costs of goods sold. But these people who are applying now, they put in information that is incorrect. And so when the cost of goods sold is the cost of making something else. So say I import dresses, that cost against the cost of the sale of all the dresses should be minimal. And there should be some money left over. But when the applicant put my sales were 100,000 and my cost of goods sold were 200,000, then that again shows that their business is not viable. So they will be declined because their economic injury is not substantiated. And then you think, well, can't I just go back in and change the numbers? They didn't remember what they put. So the system created a decline. We will send them a letter saying you're declined because economic injury is not substantiated. And just know that that means that they did not put the correct information in the system. So what we'll ask them to do is provide the latest tax returns and the IRS Form 4506, and we'll use the figures there. Tax returns might not be completed for 2019 because most of the businesses and the world had an extension. So they can use 2018 unless the year was kind of an abnormal situation. Then I would say for them to provide their profit and loss statement for 2019. But again, these are errors that have commonly been made because the business applicant thinks they must not mean what are my sales from last year, because that's going to show I don't need a loan. And when in fact, we're trying to show that the business needs as much money as it would have generated from its sales, less its cost of goods sold from a prior year. All right, not eligible due to character reasons. In this streamlined application, there are questions that we ask about character, and that is really about the individual business owner's criminal background. One of the questions says, have you ever been arrested or convicted in conjunction with a riot or civil disorder? Have you ever been on parole, probation, or pretrial diversion other than a minor motor vehicle violation? These types of things don't mean that if you have ever been incarcerated, or if you've ever been arrested, or if you've ever had a situation where you're on probation, that SBA cannot lend to you. What we have to do is we have to know what offense occurred, when it occurred, where it occurred, and what the disposition was. For instance, let's say that I wrote some bad checks. And so I was put on 2 years probation. And this occurred 10 years ago. Once the applicant provides us with this type of detail, then the management of SBA's Processing and Disbursement Center can decide that the offense was not significant, the time frame was a long time ago, and waive any further information and put the file back in processing. However, let's say the information we get is the person was a drug dealer and they were incarcerated for 3 years and they were on probation for 10 years. and this happened 3 years ago. Well, then it might not be something that the administration can waive. In that case, we would ask for a history, a personal history statement, and we would ask for all the details of the incarceration, the disposition, where it happened, etc. And we would have to send it to headquarters, and once they send it to the FBI and get the report back, then management can make a determination as to whether or not this person is of good character and we can lend to them. Okay, no is not always no. Sometimes no means we must have more information. All right, applicant requests a change in plans or fails to proceed. This is probably the easiest one. The system runs the application through several different points. The first point the application comes through is credit. Then the second point, if everything is okay, it comes through to a proposed loan amount. The applicant will get an email and it'll say, come to the portal and look at the loan amount and determine whether you want to accept it or you want less of a loan. There's a little slide bar. And so let's say that you were offered a loan for $30,000. And I'm going to tell you that you can borrow up to $25,000 without a lien on any property. It's just like a credit card. You go, well, I don't want to lien on my property, so I'd rather have the $25,000. The person can elect to just take $25,000, right? But let's suppose that this particular business was waiting on a Paycheck Protection Program loan, or waiting on the state to get some grant funds and feel like they can get enough from that, or they just decided to hang it up. That would be an example of the applicant changing plans. They didn't come to the portal. They did not select the loan amount. They didn't decide to continue with the process. That would be a withdrawal. We asked them to write us to tell us they're not interested, but in reality, if they fail to respond to our requests, we will withdraw the case for them. We'll give 60 days for somebody to come to the portal and select the loan amount. And when I say select the loan amount, I want to be clear. We have established a proposed loan amount. They don't get to say, I would like $1 million. They don't get to say, I'd like $10 million. We have established what the maximum amount is for their particular eligibility. And they can take $1,000 up to whatever that maximum amount is. But in the 60 days that we give them to make that decision and election, if they don't respond, then we will withdraw the case. That will still give them up to 6 months to reopen it. Another time this would occur is on the next phase. Let's say they select the loan amount, and the next time they get an email invite, it's to have them sign the loan closing documents. So they would go to the portal, download the loan closing documents, use DocuSign and upload them again, and then our legal department would review it and order the funds to come from the U.S. Treasury. Well, let's say that I have this pair right now. They're doctors, they're partners. One partner does not want the loan, the other partner does. We need both partners to sign the loan closing documents. One will, one won't. So if 60 days go by and they can't resolve this themselves, then SBA is going to withdraw the application and or decline their request for a loan, if you want to put it that way, and give them up to 6 months to reopen it. So that is a failure to proceed. Now we're coming down to not eligible because the applicant is not a small business. Almost any time that a business applies to the Small Business Administration, they have to qualify as a, quote, small business. The way that works is every single business has a classification. They have a number that is given to each particular industry by the North American Industrial Classification Code. And then SBA has a chart. And for instance, let's take shoes. And let's pretend the code for shoes is 10,000. And let's suppose that you sell men's shoes. So the code is 10,001. Then in that chart, we would look up what the maximum revenue is for that business that they can make and still be small, probably $8 million. Well, we've made it very easy. Again, streamlined application. We did not ask for one single document to be presented with the application. So in this case, if a business has 500 or less employees, they're considered small. We don't have to look up anything. But if you're that one business that you have 550 employees, then you're going to have to look up the North American Industrial Classification System Code and look at SBA's chart to see if you do qualify as a small business. And then beyond that, there's even a form where the business can submit 3 years of tax returns and fill out a questionnaire and dispute a determination that whatever the number of employees or the revenue is correct for that industry. But this is really, for all the files I've seen, I really haven't seen anybody that is not a small business that has applied for the economic injury disaster loans for COVID. All right, here is a biggie. This is delinquent child support. There are certain things that come about because there was some legislator that determined that if this occurs, we're not going to lend somebody. And one of those things is delinquent child support. If the business owner is more than 60 days delinquent in child support, that's unsatisfactory credit. That's a reason for a decline. We would send them a letter. Unfortunately, we are unable to approve your loan for the economic injury disaster loan for COVID-19. You have unsatisfactory credit due to delinquent child support. You have up to 6 months to ask for reconsideration, must be in writing, and submit whatever information that would help overcome the reason for decline. Well, what could you provide? There's no list of things that you could provide because there's infinite number of documents and situations. It may be that what this person needs to provide is proof from the court that the child support has been caught up. Maybe what they need to provide is information, a dispute on their credit report, that this is not their claim. Maybe what they need to provide is paychecks where it's being garnished and a court order where it shows that they're paying what they're supposed to pay. So these are just an example. And the reason I'm bringing it up is people do not like to read. And they will get a letter and they'll call your office and they'll say, I got declined, what do I do? So I want to make sure no is not always no. It means no until you can provide information that would help us overcome the reason for the decline and look again. Business activity is not eligible. Okay, so as we go through the streamlined application and we put down the legal name of the business and the address and the EIN and the social security number, there are two questions. One, ask the business applicant, what is your business industry? And there's a little drop down, and from those choices in the drop down, they select something. And then after the business industry, there's another question and it says, what is your business activity? And there's a choice and there's a drop down and they pick from that. These are kind of broad categories. And you would go, okay, well, what would not be eligible? Well, early on in the process, religious organizations were not eligible. They have not been eligible for years and years and years. come to you with over 30 years of experience with SBA. But Congress, during the second stimulus, passed a bill that just for economic injury disaster loans for COVID, churches and religious organizations can, CAN can, get working capital loans. So that's no longer a business activity that's not eligible. Farming used to be a business that was not eligible, but now they also were included in the bill. But lobbying activities are not eligible. We have a lot of requests for whether or not a chamber of commerce is an eligible type of a nonprofit. And it depends on the business operation. If the chamber's operation is lobbying as a part of their function, then they're not eligible. If lobbying is not a part of their function, then they could apply. Another operation that's not eligible is finance and lending institutions. Another one would be gambling casinos or gambling operations where half of the revenue is earned by gambling. Another one, and this was just a real situation. The applicant is a photographer. He's got a contract with 2 or 3 counties, and every year he takes the school pictures for the children and for the classes overall. He also works on photos for weddings. So what did he put? For the industry, he put photography. And then he thought about, yeah, I've been doing a lot of weddings lately and graduations and parties and stuff. And so when it came down to business activity, he put adult entertainment. Well, that is not an eligible business. SBA does not lend money to, I'll call it hoochie coochie places. So, and he was dumbfounded, and I was too for a long time, because he's like, prompting a lot of things for our loan officer to look at. And when a business activity is not eligible, they would get the official decline and say the business activity is not eligible. And they have up to 6 months to ask for reconsideration. And we would like to see a copy of the most recent tax returns and the IRS Form 4506T. All right, now we are coming to the most confusing letter ever written by SBA, and I am here to admit it. This letter will say, unfortunately, we were unable to approve your loan because of unverifiable information. If you disagree with this decision, you have the right to ask for reconsideration, provide information to overcome the reason for decline, and you must provide a request in writing, submit it to this address, and you have up to 6 months. And you go, okay, well, what is the unverifiable information? It does not say anything. So let me help the applicant, the constituent, understand. One of the first things that it could be is if the business applicant is not a U.S. citizen. That is not to say that if you are not a citizen that you cannot get a business loan. What it is to say is that we must have documented proof that the business owner is here legally. What could they provide? A written letter of reconsideration and a copy of their permanent resident card. Send it in with a copy of the latest federal tax return and the IRS Form 4506T, and we will take another look at it. So that's an easy question to ask. If somebody comes to you and they say, I don't know what this unverifiable information is, that'd be a question to ask. However, the majority, the vast majority of unverifiable information is from the fact that the applicant does not understand the significance of what a legal name of the business is and the actual banking information. What I mean by that is we, as almost the last questions of the application, ask the applicant to provide the name of their checking account banker, their account number, their routing number, and then the system takes the name from the legal name of the business and puts it on there. Well, let's say I'm Kathy Cook Florist Limited, but I am a sole proprietor. When you are a sole proprietor, it does not matter what you call your business. The legal name of your business is your name. So if I put for the legal name of my business, Kathy Cook Florist Ltd, and then my bank account is in the name of Kathy Cook, that's not a match. So the system goes, nope, not a match, not a match. This is not correct. And no disbursements can be made. Let's take another situation where I had an applicant and we asked the applicant for their physical address. And the applicant put P.O. Box 99, 123 Main Street in whatever city. Well, no, you cannot have a post office box as a physical address. And not only did he put all that, but then he wrote a little note, like I just moved my business last month. Well, all of that came out as a not valid address. And so that caused a problem, and that was unverifiable information. We had a husband and wife scenario where the husband put his name on the application, but only the wife's name is on the checking. Didn't match. We have had people put down the information for their debit card. The U.S. Treasury disperses these funds. They will not disperse funds to a debit card, so that's not acceptable. We have had people who have opened different kind of banking with some e-commerce type of organizations. If they will not let SBA verify their status, then we can't do business with them. So the applicant is going to have to get checking with somebody else. For whatever reason, early on, Wells Fargo was a problem bank. And what I found was Wells Fargo officially changed the name to Wells Fargo, N, capital N, dot, capital A dot, Wells Fargo North American. So some of the accounts that our system went to poll in the automated clearinghouse to check got were not authenticated, let's say, because of issues like that. I live in Georgia, and we have SunTrust Bank, and it's now merging with a bank called BB&T, and it's becoming this bank named Truist. Well, you know, my checks still say SunTrust on it, but if I didn't put Truist, then that would be a problem. I have to tell you, truly, 90% of all these unverifiable information situations stem from banking errors. Not only will it stop disbursements, but it will cause problems all the way down the road. Currently, SBA has exhausted all of the funds for the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Advance. These were funds that were forgivable loan funds, for lack of a better word, grants. They were offered at $1,000 per employee, up to a $10,000 max. Well, when we went through the system and the system is trying to authenticate the banking information, if the banking information was incorrect, then the system would try again, and if it's still incorrect, then the applicant would not get that advance. And it might have sat there for months and months, and now it is too late. That applicant, even if they applied on the very first day, will not be eligible for an advance because those funds have been exhausted. And by law, we cannot offer funds for programs that have no remaining dollars in the system. So those are things that not only am I telling you that for reconsideration, but I'm telling you that if you have businesses, that truly they thought by now we'd be out of COVID. I kind of thought that myself. I thought of, a couple months or so, but we're still in it and things are still becoming dire in some states. So if you have businesses and they're going to, for the first time, apply, make sure that we protect them, that we tell them, look, you're going to be asked some simple questions, but to ensure that you don't make any mistakes, why don't you get out your tax return for the last year, get out your banking information, even call your banker and say, I'm going to apply for a loan with the SBA. They disperse the funds from the Treasury. I want to make sure that I have the correct routing number, the correct account number, and the name on my account so there's no problem. And you think, well, this is silly. They should just look at their check. You know what I found? I found that in some cases, some banks have different routing numbers when the disbursements go through the automated clearinghouse. Had no idea. I thought whatever routing numbers on your check would only be that. Sometimes in credit unions, there's a problem with the numbers on the checks. So it's going to behoove us and behoove the applicants to make sure that they have whatever source documents they need to begin the process of the streamlined loan application. And believe me, it is really, really streamlined. We didn't ask for tax returns. We didn't ask for profit and loss. We didn't ask for a balance sheet. We didn't ask for monthly sales, schedule of liabilities, personal financial statements, a multitude of things that are required for other disaster loans. But for the COVID-19, SBA went through everything that we could do to help make it a seamless and quick process of applying. But when people just don't recognize that we're asking for the gross sales for the 12 months prior to the disaster, when they're not paying attention to their tax ID numbers. And I had a guy the other day, and he never got his invite to the portal, so he never was able to select a loan amount. And they withdrew his case, and he said, how can you do that? I've never heard from anybody. And so I looked at his application, and he put down his name, let's call him Jimmy Joe, at jimmyjoe@yahoo.com, C-O-N. He mistyped it. So we kept sending the email to that address, but of course it didn't work. The reason we can't just go right in and correct it is we have about 10 million applications. A lot of those are duplications because people realized they didn't put the right information in the first time and they thought, well, I'll just submit another one. And that's not the way to go. Nobody should be submitting another application. If they've got one in the system and it starts with a 3, then that's the one they work through all of the time, whether it's approval or decline or withdrawal. We use the same application. We just update information that's submitted to us. All right, so I know this was exciting information, and hopefully though, it will help you understand why people get declined and why they haven't heard from SBA and what hangs up a file and what they need to do. We have a customer service center. We have a couple thousand people, I think now, that are answering the phones. And if the applicant calls and gives their application number, they can provide them with some information. But there's no information put in the application notes that tells us what the unverifiable information is. We have all had to just learn through working with this new loan processing product. So one thing I would say is, if I were an applicant and called customer service, I would say, can I just check some of my information with you? Do you have down my email address as XYZ? Do you have my banking information as this? And if not, then they know what information they need to supply to correct the information in the system and to submit with their written request for reconsideration and their latest tax returns in the IRS Form 4506T. We also have an email, disaster customer service at sba.gov, where they can write questions and receive responses. The customer service number, 800-659-2955, is at the bottom of the slide. And then to the left, COVID-19 relief, all together, no dots, no dashes, COVID-19 relief.sba.gov is the portal or the web page address where an applicant can apply for the first time. Again, if you have applied and you've been declined, or you need a status of your loan, your same application, you do not submit another application. The second application, and if there's a third or more, will be marked as a duplication. However, let's suppose that you're McDonald's and you have 2 McDonald's. And so the system looks for repeat information. So 2 McDonald's, we've got Kathy Cook and same social security number. The system flags it as a duplication. It's not until somebody calls us and says, look, these are not a duplication. These are 2 different restaurants. Then we can research it and we can set the loan applications up separately and start them back in loan processing. All right, so it is about 7 minutes before 7, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has. If there's somebody asking a question, I don't understand you, maybe you need to get closer to your microphone.
If they're having trouble with answering over the phone, you can, if you're on the video, you can do it in the chat. We can read out the questions.
I'll start. Hi, Kathy. Thanks again for giving us this presentation, which we can bring back to our business owners and our municipalities here. I was wondering, you gave such a thorough presentation. How much time on average would you say a member of the SBA spends reviewing an application?
I really can't say, because this is a brand new product that we're working with. This we call it RAPID, R-A-P-I-D. And some things work through the system pretty automatically, like the credit part. And then there's some other things where a loan officer has to review all components. So, you know, I just don't have a feel for it, because this is again, I've worked over 30 years for SBA, and we've never been through anything like this. We've never had the ability to declare a pandemic as a disaster, and we've never had this volume of loans. I think even our administrator said between the PPP loans and economic injury disaster loans, in the first 14 weeks, we have exceeded the volume of the last 14 years. So, you know, I wouldn't say it's a long, long time. I think that where our time is spent is the files that are hung up because of the banking problems. And so when we send the email to somebody to come to the portal, we've sent invitations for them to look at the banking information and correct it. And we did a mass project and sent 77,000 applicants notice saying, please take this time, look at, you know, everything that you need to look at. And so some people were able during that time to actually go in and switch those numbers around to show that their sales were greater than cost of goods sold and things such as that. Mm-hmm. But it's really ebb and flow. We're getting applications in and that we're able to ingest into the system quicker and process quicker, but we've still got these first applicants from April, May, and June, and they're just, you know, not able to provide the information we need to get the banking information squared away, or they just don't respond to the letters. They just say, well, call it quits. I knew I wasn't going to get the loan, you know. Quits.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's, you know, it's good to know that. And I have to say, Kathy, I've spoken with a number of business owners who were approved for their loans, and obviously they're very happy campers. So thank you to you and everyone else for what you do. I know in the beginning there were many businesses that were frustrated that they were not getting answers in, I guess, what they expected to be a time frame. They felt like they weren't hearing back for a while. Could you just, my last question, could you just speak to how it changed at the onset of the pandemic when the loans were open at first to now? I would imagine as you're closing cases and giving loans out, the volume hopefully is decreasing now. And so what's like the turnaround time now for an application compared to how it was, say, 2 months ago?
It's like night and day. Let me tell you, at the very beginning of this whole process, there wasn't any streamlined application. And so the applicants were asked to provide tax returns, profit and loss statements, monthly sales, all kinds of documentation. And whether they applied online or whether they sent in a paper loan application package and all the forms. Well, what happened is nobody expected that almost immediately we would have 4 million applicants, and the whole system just collapsed. Our processing system couldn't handle it. So it took us a while to get up and going another processing system that we had in the wings for emergencies, and thank goodness we did. And it's taking a while because we are not a traditional lender. We're a government lender. We have some more regulations than banks on some things, and some things such as with the COVID loans, we are much more relaxed. And so there's all these things that were being improved in the processing as the months and weeks went by. At the very beginning of the process, we, SBA, I'm a public information officer, were not even able to see the file. We just knew from the combination of numbers where they would be in the queue. And now we're able to see almost everything that a loan officer can see. So it's night and day. Our communications director from headquarters has been using the 2-week to 3-week mark for processing. And that is just a great thing. And when I'm saying processing, I mean, he's even daring to say that from inception to even disbursement. So I think a lot of that is happening. Again, the main thing that hangs us up is this incorrect information that unfortunately gets put in. And so, rightfully so, that people don't understand the process. I don't want anybody to ever be an expert. And it has been a very deep learning curve for us too. We not only had to hire people, but we've had to kind of train on the process because it's brand new and experience different things about it. And so we're getting better as the process is getting better. And I have no problem with somebody, being upset that things are taking a long time, because I can understand. Businesses are dependent on day-to-day operations. And when we're going, month to month and saying, just hang on, that's hard. But I think we're much better now, and, really able to better you all and applicants and our partners with the small business development centers and SBA district offices, some of the nuances and situations so that they can help applicants understand how better to prepare for getting a loan.
I have a quick question, and that is that I had applied and had been looking for an email from EIDS. It came from Disaster Customer Service and went into my spam. So I lost several weeks on the initial response. The end result is that it was withdrawn because I failed to proceed within the certain time frame. So when I got that note, I sent the letter in for reconsideration. That was July 5th. How long does it take for them to reconsider on a failed to proceed, withdrawn, failed to proceed?
Every reconsideration is treated the same. It's not, we don't assign the staff by reason. And so the first come, first serve. I really have no feeling for how many reconsiderations there are. So it's hard to project. I know there's a lot because of these errors and things, but I wouldn't think that 3 weeks would be unreasonable to wait.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I apologize. I'm sorry for that happened, because that's just one of those little simple things. And who knew? And so from no fault of your own, that went into spam. And we just, because of the volume, we just don't have the ability to call everybody. We've tried to do a lot of robocalls and emails and things, but it's still hard when you got the volume. Oh, and I forgot to tell you guys that out of the 27 states, the one municipality being Washington, D.C., and the 2 territories, which are U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, that my office cares for as far as disaster activity, the state assigned to me is New Jersey. So I am your point of contact always. And I did not enjoy the jug handle learning experience, just FYI.
Well, welcome to Jersey. We're happy to have you.
Yeah, boy, that was an eye opener, because I am a national shopaholic. I stimulate the local economy wherever I go, and I forever would see some great shopping center strip, and I'd want to go, and oh no, there's no break in the road for the next whatever 120 miles. So that was interesting. Do we happen to have any more questions, Mayor?
Hi, Kathy.
Hi.
How you doing? Oh, a quick question. Now, where it says the gross income for the prior 12 months, if you could clarify again, is that for just 2019, or can that include January, February, March?
Okay, the question reads, what is the gross profit for the 12 months prior to the incident, which is the disaster? And so I know that we said we gave the COVID a start date of January 31st. So everybody is interpreting what are your gross sales for the 12 months prior to the COVID starting, and they're using the 12 months being the whole 2019. So that's what I would do. It's technically they're looking for February through January. So February 2019 to January 2020, that's ridiculous. So I'm going to give you the skinny. Just do 2019 gross sales. And if you don't have cost of goods sold, and you'll know it because you go on your tax return, and no matter what type of entity you are, there's going to be a space for gross sales, and there's going to be a place for cost of goods sold. If there's nothing there, then that means you're a service industry, and leave that blank, or put 0 if you want, but don't put, an amount. I mean, it's almost sad. I mean, people are putting $200,000 gross sales, $200,000 cost of goods sold, $200,000 in lost rents, $200,000 in operating expenses, and all that just equals 0. So just be thoughtful and put whatever your profit and loss statement for the last year, 2019, or if you filed your federal tax returns for 2019, use that. If you don't have anything close to that ready and you can't get it together, and your business is fairly stable, most businesses aren't about the same thing every year. Just use 2018.
Perfect. And now, is it also possible to call, like if I needed to make an adjustment on some of the paperwork I submitted, I'd be able to just call customer service?
No, you cannot, because we can't go in fix. We are not authorized to change your information. So customer service can't do it. What they can do is they can make a notation in the file, but just really try to spend the time figuring out, get your financial things in order before you start the application. And then if you make an error, then write us as soon as you realize and say, here's my tax return, or here's my profit and loss. Please correct the following, figures. I put down cost of goods sold and I don't have any, or what have you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's good information. I appreciate it.
Good.
Hi, Kathy. This is Jason. So we have 2 questions in the chat box. The first one is Vera. They want to know if you can please confirm if disasterquestions@sba.gov is the correct email that you had mentioned.
Disaster Customer Service. DISAR Customer Service at SBA.gov. I'm sorry, my enunciation is a little off.
Thank you very much.
And Gabriel has a question about whether we will record, if this recording will be able to use for playback. Gabriel, we are recording it, and what I can do is I will send a link once the video is uploaded to all participants. This way you can rewatch or send it to people, businesses that you think could use this information.
Sounds great.
Well, I promised to finish before 7:15, and if we have no more questions, I think I might have accomplished that.
I
since-
apologize. I have one quick question for you, Kathy.
I
you
don't know,
mentioned that-
Mayor, if you're allowed. Go ahead.
Is that
Of course.
Thank you. You mentioned that the applicant has 6 months to respond. If we've been going through a series of back and forth, submitting additional information, is there a point where the application may get rejected without further, conversation or accepting additional documents, or are we allowed to continue the dialogue for the period of 6 months? Is there a clear cutoff?
Generally you can ask for reconsideration as many times. What our normal path is the first time you get declined, then you have up to 6 months, and then if we open it back up with whatever information you provided and unfortunately decline it a second time, we give you a final appeal time. There's very rare, but there are some cases where we just have to say this is the final appeal, and it's mainly in cases where somebody may be saying, I dispute that I'm not a small business. I've looked at your Code of Federal Regulations, I've looked at the classification for my business, and the classification for my business should be this, and I meet the test for the small business, and they go through a particular appeal process with an Office of Hearing and Appeals, something like that takes a long time, and then once that ruling comes down, then that's pretty well it. Or if, let's say, somebody has, unfortunately, the character reason, the criminal background, and the evaluation of the offense is such that we can't make the loan, then, that's pretty well it. There's not going to be another opportunity where, if the offense was so egregious that we said no, that we would change our minds, but they can appeal it. But then after that, it's probably something we wouldn't entertain. But all the time, our goal is really, truly to try to help people in the aftermath of a disaster. We just have to be straight about certain things that are policies and legislation that we can't overcome. But if we can get supporting documents and that provide what we need, then we give it another shot. No problem.
Thank you for that.
You're absolutely welcome.
Okay, well, Kathy, thank you so much. We applaud you for this presentation. And thank you to the mayors who co-hosted and all the participants. Again, we will be sending out a link to the presentation so everybody can rewatch it if they need information, and or share it with other businesses who could benefit from it. So thank you again, Kathy, so much.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate all of you, especially probably staying late after your already long workday. So we at SBA appreciate the support, and we're just a phone call away. So have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Be well, stay safe.